Recording in progress.
Pnawn da, cynghorydd Austin
Good
Roberts.
afternoon. My name is Councillor Austin Roberts and I am the Chair of the Planning Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting, which is a multi-location. In addition to committee members, we also have officers joining us to assist with our discussions. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and the recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and for those attending remotely to choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those attending remotely, please use the raise hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and remote attendees. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will not be able to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
Any apologies for absenteeism?
Nothing. Thank you very much. Item number 2, declaration of interest.
Is there anybody with any declarations? Councillor Hunter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd like to declare a prejudicial interest in item 0/5073. The applicant is my former employer, so I think it'd be prejudicial. I will leave the meeting.
Diolch yn fawr, Councillor
Thank
Underwood.
you very much, Councillor Underwood.
I'd like to declare an interest in also 0/50673. I'm the planning applicant, and I've also submitted evidence via the planning portal, and I intend to speak on the application to the committee. After then, I will remove myself from the chamber in regards to any further debate or discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr. Oes unrhyw ddatganiadau eraill?
Any more declarations? Councillor Mandy Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a personal but not prejudicial interest in the site 0/50521, as I'm a local member of the ward. However, I've had no dealings or conversations with anyone regarding this. Thank you.
Iawn, Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Thanks, Chair. I'm attending today as a speaker, as the ward councillor, so I declare a personal but not prejudicial interest. Thanks, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr. Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask for clarification, please, on item code 0/50673? It's the application by Councillor Andrew Wood for allotments. Both Andrew and I have been county council members for 10 years, worked together, been in the same political group together. And I'd just like clarification on where that leaves me and perhaps the other members that are also in the independent group.
Yeah, the issue where there's a connection between a member of the committee or a member who's present at a meeting and an applicant in planning committee. It depends on whether or not the relationship would be considered a close personal association. So that normally means something more than just coming into connection with each other as part of your duties, but can include particularly close connections. The example given by the Ombudsman in their guidance is you would not have a close personal association if you're the same member of a golf club, but you would if you played a weekly round of golf. And as I say, that within that definition and that guidance, particularly close business connections are included. So I clearly can't speak for a councillor on those issues. It has to be a personal view on how close that councillor considers that connection to be in terms of what level of interest they wish to declare.
You all right with that, Nigel?
Yeah, I feel that the fact that Andrew has never invited me to his house for a cup of tea and has never been to my house for a cup of tea, that would seem that we're not particularly close, although we're obviously members of the independent group in Conway. So I'm quite happy. Thank you, Chair.
Dave Jones. Dave Jones.
Hi, I'd like to declare non-prejudicial interest in 0/50590. It falls within my ward, but I haven't had any contact with anybody in involving this application. Thank you.
Before we go on, just for clarification, I take it because Councillor Andrew Wood is a member of this committee, and also the rest of us, therefore, no Councillor Wood do, and taking the advice you've taken from given to Councillor Nigel Smith, that the rest of us don't have to declare the fact that because we are a member of the same committee that we know Councillor Wood.
A personal interest doesn't actually arise because there isn't a close, if you're not a close personal associate, then there's no such interest that arises in the first place. It's for transparency. It's always fine for members to mention that, but that wouldn't technically make it such an interest. I would just clarify, Chair, if I may, members have declared where they are ward members. Again, that's always a good thing for transparency. But again, it's not technically a personal interest. It's just a matter that is worth declaring for transparency. And as Councillor Mandy says, to make it transparent that there's been no connection, such as being a member of the Town Council Planning Committee, etc.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
I'm not on the town planning. Yeah, that's fine. It's
all right.
Just a county council ward member and town.
Yeah, right. We shall continue. Right. Item 3, materion brys.
Urgent matters. Item.
No. Item 4, y cofnodion.
Item number 4, minutes. To approve and sign as a correct record minutes of the previous meeting. Pages 7 to 15.
Councillor Alan Hunter, do you propose that?
Happy to propose the minutes.
Lovely. Osa Eilydd, seconder.
Do we have a second?
Councillor Gwynol Ellis, diolch yn fawr. Can we show our hands? I think everybody seems to be on the same page. Iawn. Item 5.
Item number 5. To consider the following reports. Item number 5A, the code reference is 0/50521, conversion of buildings yard to residential dwelling house, ProBuild Limited, Jubilee Passage Llandudno. Mr. Dave Watson.
Thank you, Chair. This application was deferred at the June committee meeting and the members did a site visit yesterday. The recommendation is still minded to refuse conditional planning permission. Chair, thanks.
Iawn, dyna ni. Oes rhywun isio
Does anybody want to say anything?
want to speak first? Councillor Chris Cater.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I had to give my apologies for the site visit yesterday, but I did go to the site on Sunday to have a look at the land levels and so on. And I must admit, I'd be interesting to know what members thought yesterday, because it is a low-lying piece of land at the back of Jubilee Street. The Jubilee Street houses seem to be higher up. And I walked around to the Trinity Avenue house residential development that we gave permission for a few years ago, and that seemed to be on a higher level, and it also had ground floor garages and things. So the living accommodation was raised up. So I must admit that there are some sort of site-specific characteristics here, which may be a little bit dubious. I know that the applicant has put in flood resilient and resistant items into the application, and is going to be using construction techniques and so on, and a floor plan, which will minimize risk. So I'm a bit undecided on this one. I'm just wondering whether we could put a condition on that sleeping accommodation is only on the first floor and is not allowed on the ground floor, because that does seem to increase the risk. And I know that the plan doesn't have sleeping accommodation on the ground floor, but I think we need to be very certain about that. So it'd be interesting to hear what other members on the site visit felt yesterday.
Councillor Wood, did you want
Thank
to?
you, Chair. I did a site visit with Joe and Mandy a few weeks ago, and I looked at it, and I've got to agree with Chris. I would, if we could have a condition where it was noted in the report of the safety of the second floor, I'd be happy with that as in regards to turning this into a residential dwelling house. Thank you.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's interesting. I note Chris's concerns and comments. I just want to remind Christopher that we did actually approve, probably about 5 years ago, accommodation which is actually in the cellar of a property. It was below ground level up the main road, but round the back it was at ground level, if you remember the ground fell away. So for me, whilst I'd be happy to accept that the sleeping accommodation is upstairs, I'd just like to play on a level playing field for everybody and be fair to everybody. Llandudno is low lying. So yeah, I'd be happy to go along with Chris's suggestion that sleeping is upstairs. God forbid if we were ever to have a 600mm inundation of water, as in the report. I don't know what they'd do. Thank you.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I did the site visit yesterday, and yeah, I take on board what Chris has said. I'd have more concerns if it was a single story or a bungalow, but I think this is doable. I can understand the officer's concerns, and on that, I would be happy if, with that condition, to propose that we approve this application.
Councillor Mandy Hawkins.
Hi there. Again, I appreciate all the comments that have been said, and I definitely would take on board what Chris has said. He's got, experience within the planning committee, as have a lot of us. So I'm really grateful for any expertise, recommendations that you can give to us. In regards to Andrew's proposal, I'd be happy to second that, providing we have that clause that the sleeping accommodation is on the first floor. Plus, the reason I'd be happy to do it as well, this property is already there. It's a conversion of it. It's not building a completely new property. We do need accommodation, and even though it's only one dwelling, and we know the majority of Llandudno is in a floodplain, if whoever's going to live there is happy with those conditions, I'll be happy providing we've got that sleeping accommodation on the first floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I shall bring in the officer, David Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in two minds of this to some degree, whether or not we can have a condition that says no sleeping accommodation on the ground floor. I don't really think that's practically enforceable, because if it was flouted, you might say we'd never get to know about it. And so we can't really practically enforce something like that. I think this is a 2-story unit, and it's self-contained as a 2-story unit. So I think you could probably have a condition that says it shall remain as a 2-story unit, and the first floor shall always contain a safe refuge for people. You could have a condition of that nature, but that you might say that goes in hand with it being 2-story anyway, because people would gravitate upstairs. So I think I don't think you could really put a condition on that says no sleeping accommodation on the ground floor, because it just wouldn't be enforceable.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor Hawkins.
I think a safe refuge is a good compromise.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you. I've got another couple of hands up. Cynghorydd Ifor Lloyd.
Diolch, Matt. David newydd.
Thank you. David has just answered the question I was going to ask with regarding to how you can put this as an attachment. Thank you.
Batola.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot's been said already about it. As long as the engineering structures and the technical issues have been adhered to, then I'm sure the builder is trained enough to understand the implications of what the risks are. So quite frankly, what are the benefits? We're getting a home for somebody. It's near a school. It's got a gymnasium around the corner. It's near town centre. It's a property that someone would be interested in, as long as they're made aware if there's possible risks there and they are adhered to with the planning guys and the builder. I'm not saying bought at owner's risk, but I mean, obviously there's things to consider. But at the end of the day, the benefits are you're getting a home for somebody, and that's the benefits. So I just want to air that feeling, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr. I can't see any other person's hand up. Oh, so, yes, Paula.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the point around the condition, I think as well what you need to consider is access and egress from the site. So although there will be potential some betterment with having the sleeping accommodation on the first floor, you've still this dwelling is at a lower level, and how are people going to get out of that building in event of a flood? I would also add that the proposal comprises highly vulnerable development, and national guidance is clear that the developments must meet the requirements in the TAN as well, TAN 15. At the moment, it doesn't comply with national policy because NRW are dissatisfied with the level of information that has been provided. They have said that the proposal fails to demonstrate the risks and consequences can be managed to an acceptable level. I just thought I'd draw that to your attention because there is a risk to the authority in approving new developments that will be or could be at risk of flooding in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. We've got a proposal. Yes, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. It's just for clarity in terms of the proposal, because there's been a little bit of back and forth in terms of a potential condition. Councillor Chris has proposed, not proposed. Councillor Chris has mentioned a condition in terms of no sleeping accommodation on the ground floor. Councillor Allen has then proposed that permission is granted subject to such a condition, which has been seconded. But we've then had advice from the planning officers, and then there has been mention from other members that they might be content with the kind of condition that's been proposed by a planning officer. So it's just to clear up, where are we in terms of the proposition? As the original proposer, Councillor Hunter, are you content in terms of your proposition to adopt the condition proposed by the planning officer?
Yes, yeah.
And
in light of that information, if Councillor Mandy is still happy to second, I'll go with the officer.
Okay, so that's the proposition we've got, but mindful of the officer's advice in respect of this is technical advice note 15. That's the national advice that this committee has in terms of the acceptability in terms of flood risk. This is highly vulnerable development, and that technical advice note's pretty clear that this proposal does not comply with it. So it's with that in mind that you need to consider what your position is in terms of that proposition.
Can I just ask then, Chair, if we can defer this to get more information if the information hasn't come through? Is that a possibility? Paula? On the advice that Paula gave them, it seems something's holding it up.
I mean, there have been a couple of, the applicant has submitted additional information to try and satisfy NLW, but they've come back again to say that they still feel that the level of information isn't sufficient. So I think it may well be difficult or time consuming to do that. So my advice would be to determine the application as it stands and let the applicant have ongoing discussions with NLW or to submit an appeal.
Okay, on that, I'm happy to stay with my proposal.
Okay, and Mandy, are you happy to?
Happy to second it, yeah.
Councillor Chris Keater.
Just to clarify, there are in the application flood resilient and resistant construction techniques and plans and a flood plan. I am correct in saying that does exist in this application. Yes. Okay, well, I'll support this as well.
Okay. Councillor Nigel Smith.
Oh, no, I withdrew my hand, Chair. I'm going to support this
Okay.
application.
Lovely. Okay, I think we can move on then. We've got a proposal by Ellen Hunter and seconded by Councillor Mandy Hawkins. So we'll go to the vote. Anybody against? Yeah, okay. Any abstentions? There we are then. That is now carried, Mona. Yeah. Yes, just to inform you, because you've gone against officer's recommendation, this application will come back at the next meeting in August for ratification, or if you've changed your minds at all. Okay? Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Right, ymlaen â ni.
Cadeirydd, mae'n ddrwg gen i.
Chair, I'm sorry. Before we move on, can I have permission to turn my camera off because the signal isn't very good here? I'm still here, but we'll have to do. Thank you. No problem. I hadn't noticed that you were there, to be honest with you. We'll move on. 0/50433. Erection
Access and associated works, land adjacent to Conway Road, Penman Mawr. And we have speakers on this application. First of all, can I invite Mr. Steve Grimster, the agent, and he's registered to speak in favour.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. On behalf of the applicant, we welcome the officer's recommendation to approve this application. The site in question benefits from an extant planning permission for 14 dwellings granted in April 2020 and which remains capable of being implemented. The replan scheme now before you has been designed to conform with the latest active travel guidance, whilst also providing for a scheme which better responds to the existing utilities and services across the site to support its delivery. The proposed changes include the removal of the internal access road serving all plots. The driveways to plots 1 to 11 will now be accessed directly off Conway Road. This reflects the type of driveway arrangement approved on adjacent land. The realignment of plots 12 and 14 owing to the removal of this internal access road. The creation of rear gardens to plots 1 to 11. A communal play area within the site, which is not proposed as part of the extant permission. This and the new rear gardens will provide for a greener setting, supporting the health and well-being of future residents. the relocation of visitor parking within the site adjacent to plots 12 and 14, and a 3-metre shared footway adjacent to the site on Conway Road, in line with the latest active travel guidance, providing safe pedestrian and cycle connectivity with the site to encourage sustainable travel. These changes will deliver a betterment over and above the benefits of the extant permission. The replanned development will remain comparable to the approved scheme by providing a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom homes and delivering 3 2-bedroom affordable homes made available for sale at discounted market value for people with a local connection. It will also ensure that the proposal does not cause any harm to the visual and residential amenity of neighbouring and future residents, nature conservation, agricultural land and drainage. We are aware of some concerns that have been raised in relation to road safety and highways impacts. Throughout the application process, the applicant and their highways consultants have engaged with the Council's Highways Department to evidentially agree acceptable visibility display, parking and footway arrangements. There is no objection to the proposal on safety grounds from the Highways Department, and we thank them for their cooperation. The identified noise mitigation measures to the A55 remain consistent with those accepted previously by the Council. Full details can be submitted for approval prior to any development commencing. There's no objection from the Council's Public Protection team. The replanned scheme will see this allocated site delivered in the next 18 to 24 months, delivering much needed new homes in the urban area. This reflects the area's status in the LDP as a sustainable location for new housing. The applicant remains fully committed to delivering these homes. For the reasons set out in the addendum note, the applicant does not consider a deferral of this application to be justified. To conclude, the benefits of the development remain compelling, aligning with the site's LDP allocation. We hope that you can support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Ac I siarad yn erbyn y cais.
To talk against the application, Councillor Anne.
You have 3 minutes, Anne.
Yeah, thanks very much, Austin. Thanks, Chair. Members, I ask you to defer determination of this proposal to enable a site visit to take place. With all due respect, I think you need to see the issues in context and in person to understand their impact. This is a radically different application from the one previously approved. If you are minded to implement the officer's recommendation, planning conditions in Section 106 monies need to be targeted. My first issue is road and footpath safety, with now 11 highway access points proposed in close proximity to Penn Phoenix, which is the highly popular community sports hub and football ground. Training sessions, events and matches take place there throughout the week. The sports hub is a licensed premise and operates 7 days a week as a social club too. The new 11 new highway access points proposed present significant additional risk to vehicles and to children and families walking and crossing Conway Road to access the sports hub, or to walk to school at Capilillo from Pamamar, or to walk to the school to Escopenkai from Dogavoche. There is only one pedestrian footpath in this area. It runs along the front of the development. The previously approved application at this site had only one access point to the highway, so 11 access points are a significant change whose impact should not be underestimated. We need, as a planning condition, double yellow lines and a pedestrian crossing to protect our children at this site. We also need for the construction complex to be wholly within the site. My second issue is inappropriate A55 outdoor noise reduction. 3-metre fence is not high enough given the height and proximity of the A55 and with the railway in close proximity too. This has been raised by Penn Town Councillor and other statutory consultees. Members will be aware that recently the Conway Gypsy Traveller site had to have fencing upgrades as residents complained of sleep deprivation and unacceptable noise. We need an enhanced design. We need to get this right first time. And the third and final issue is the siting of the play park. Members need to visit nearby council-owned and now closed Cali Copec Play Park site to appreciate the well-being and access benefits of locating this development's play facilities there. It's only a short walk of a few hundred metres, less than from Budlondeb to Conway Library. It would provide somewhere for families and children to play while siblings use the 3G community pitch. Relocation would free up space within the development to provide garden space for the one affordable flat without outdoor space. Thinking outside the box like this would provide increased use, better access and improved productivity to the 3G pitch. We request that play facilities be replated to this park and ask officers to explore this location with the developer as a community win-win with improved community value and access. Thanks, members.
Thank you, Chair. In the addendum, it refers to the tree officer's response. We don't have a response on this particular application. We had one on the previous application, and he had no objection at that time. He said the proposal requires the removal of all trees growing adjacent to Conway Road. He said they were self-seeded sycamore and other commonly occurring species, category C trees. Also to refer you to the public protection response, which is in relation to the current application. It was omitted from the main report, but we did get the response back in February. And that raised concerns about the close proximity of the site to the busy A55 and the railway line, both of which had the potential to impact on amenity of future occupiers by way of noise nuisance. They accepted that should not always be considered as a barrier to development, but they said it was important to ensure that the suitable noise mitigation scheme is incorporated into the design and construction of the dwellings to ensure potential impact is minimised. And they recommended conditions. One of them, the first one, was that noise mitigation measures that are detailed in the noise assessment report are implemented to ensure the standards of internal and external noise can be met to prevent noise nuisance. And they also recommended a construction method statement. I wanted just to, I think I can do it in due course, but I wanted to, if you're going to be debating whether to defer the application or not, I'd like to refer you to some of the differences or similarities between the two developments. So I'd show you the drawings that are submitted in the current application, and you can compare them to the ones in the previously approved application. So you can see the relationship in terms of layout and design, and you can see the noise impact, the similarities, and you can see the highway differences as well. Members, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Right. Os na rywun isio siarad?
Okay, do we have any speakers?
Joan Nuttall. Councillor Joan Nuttall.
Diolch, Chair. I'd like to propose that we defer this pending a site visit. Obviously, I understand there's previous application gone through on this site, but the new members wouldn't have seen that. I feel like we need to go and really get a feel for the place, so I'd like to propose that that it's deferred. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joe. Is there anybody willing to second her proposal? Councillor Bertola, is that a second? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Next up, I've got Councillor David Jones.
Yeah, I was about to second Councillor Joe on that as well, and I agree with many of the issues set out by Councillor Anne McCaffrey. My main issue with this development is I'm a little nervous having 11 separate driveways crossing a pavement into a road with a 40-mile-an-hour maximum speed limit. Also, this stretch of road doesn't have a pavement on the other side. So yeah, it's for this reason that I will be supporting the proposal to defer pending a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's very interesting that the highways officers don't seem to think that the driveways are an issue. I'd be very interested if Mr. Watson could show us the differences between this application and the one that has been previously approved. Very interested to see that.
Yeah, okay. Councillor David Carr.
Thank you, Chair. The ward councillor has highlighted road safety issues, and I think on those grounds, I think it would be sensible to defer it so we could have a look. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Carr. Cynghorydd Ifor Lloyd.
Ie, dwi'n gweld bod peiriannydd Paul
I
Smith.
can see that the engineer Paul Smith is here. Could he go through the new plan compared to the old one so that we can see how they compare, please? Okay, thank you very much.
What shall we do first? Shall we go with Dave Watson first and then bring in Paul Smith? Yeah, okay. David Watson.
Okay, members, we'll show you the presentation, and I think the first few slides, you can see that's the application site. If you go down to the next one, please, Julia. And again. Okay, this is the current proposal. So the current proposal, you can see a line there of 11 dwellings fronting onto Conway Road to the southeast on that drawing, and backing onto the railway line and then onto the A55. If you go to the next slide, I think it is the next one. This is the and the next one, please. Okay, so we'll toggle between those, this one and the one before. This is the approved scheme, the one that was approved. It was approved in 2020, so April 2020, and it had the same number of dwellings, 14. It had 11 units fronting onto the Conway Road and a block of apartments on the far right east of the site. You can see there 3 apartments. That had a single access point, a shared access point off Conway Road, leading to a roadway at the back, and that roadway led between the back of the between the dwellings and the railway line A55 boundary. You can see on that layout that the units had their parking spaces on the north side, and they fronted the north. They fronted the railway line and the A55. They had parking spaces that then led onto the roadway, and they had a very small green area, amenity space on the Conway Road side to the south. And now if you toggle to the one before that, you can see now that those 11 units are pushed a little bit or brought a little bit nearer to Conway Road, a slightly different position. They now have individual access points and they have individual parking spaces leading off Conway Road. They have the rear of the units alongside the railway line. They now have individual gardens that extend backwards, and they are the front door of the units is now onto Conway Road rather than onto the back. But the unit design themselves, in terms of bedrooms and things like that, the units are the same internal design for where the bedrooms are positioned. So if you were looking at it in terms of noise impact, there's no real noise impact difference between this scheme and the previous scheme. The previous scheme had a noise report submitted to it. With it, it was subject to consultation, and that noise mitigation scheme included installation to the dwellings, and a planning condition was put on at that time to say that there should be a scheme, a more detailed scheme of noise insulation for both the internal dwellings and the external spaces. The current application also has an up-to-date noise assessment, and because of the reorientation with the dwelling, with the garden areas at the back, it now has additional measures brought into it. So it's now proposing a 3-meter high acoustic fence along the northern boundary to give mitigation. And again, the environmental health officer has said that needs to be implemented. So we are officers are content with that. That noise mitigation will be fairly high level glazing mitigation for the units and ventilation accompanying that with a 3-meter barrier. So that's in terms of noise. In terms of highways, obviously we've gone from the one single shared access to 11 individual accesses and a shared access for the other 3 units. The concern which the council has raised about highway safety and the conflict really with people using the sports area and community sports pitch, it isn't really one which the officers are concerned about. because it's a fairly normal situation for people to be walking along a footway and it to be in front of someone's driveway. There's not really a highway issue with that. There's enough visibility to see if you're leaving your driveway, to see any pedestrians. I think Paul Smith, it'd be useful to get Paul Smith to comment on the highway issues generally. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Paul, can you make a comment?
I can make comments. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd prefer specific questions to answer if that helps, as opposed to just generally talk. Is there a specific question?
You're a bit quiet, Paul.
Sorry, is there a specific question any member particularly wants me to target?
Does anybody want to ask us?
If I could.
Yes, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, just we've heard mention from the local member fears of the safety for 11 entrances onto that 40-mile-an-hour road. Does that create an additional risk compared to the previous plan of a single access?
Firstly, one thing I wish to pass to the committee is the previous plan that you were looking at, that was far from ideal. That had yet to have some issues resolved. We are acceptable of the driveway accesses onto the highway, but I wish to comment upon the 40-mile-an-hour that I keep hearing quoted. It was the highway officers' understanding that as the urbanisation of Penmaen Mawr expands outwards towards the roundabouts, the speed limit would amend also with it. So the speed limit would be moved further away from the centre of Penmaen Mawr to incorporate these new developments. It would have been to 30 miles an hour, but as we're aware, that will likely change by default to 20. So we expect the speed limit to which those properties serve to be 20, not 40 by the time of completion. I hope that assists some of the councillor questions.
That suffices my highways question. Chair, could I ask another supplementary question of Mr. Watson?
Yes, you can, by all means.
Thank you. David, just with this section 106 monies, I see it's for affordable housing and other, what does it say? I can't quite find it now. Other requirements or obligations. Is it possible to specify that as there are a number of trees being removed, that in the local community there is additional tree planting? And is it also possible to specify that some of the section 106 monies goes towards improving the play scheme in the local area?
Thank you, Chair. This scheme satisfies the affordable housing policy because it potentially involves 3 affordable housing units. So it's got the on-site provision of affordable housing units. There's not actually an accompanying payment towards affordable housing elsewhere because it doesn't need to do that. But we had with the original approved scheme, there's an existing section 106 agreement which controls the affordable housing. So we would need to have a similar sort of system of control over the proposed affordable housing with this development as a new planning permission, potentially to tie this planning permission to that existing agreement. So that the affordable housing is controlled by a 106 agreement to ensure that it remains as affordable housing in perpetuity. The other planning obligations under the existing planning permission, there's an accompanying section 106 with planning obligations that include public open space planning obligation, and that's because the scheme is 14 dwellings, so it is not required to provide any on-site public open space like a play area, but it was required to have a commuted sum payment towards public open space elsewhere. And I think it was a figure of about 13,000 and something of that nature. That it would, planning policy have said that those original planning obligations would apply equally to this scheme as an amended scheme. So the same situation arises, the Section 106 agreement would need to ensure that this development is linked to those same planning obligations like the earlier scheme was. So there'd be a payment of £13,000 towards off-site public open space provision, and it's then up to the local authority as to how that is spent. But under the terms of the existing Section 106 agreement, it says towards, I can't remember the exact wording, I think it's something like provision of public open space in the local area. I can check that wording for you, but but as officers, we're looking for the same equivalent type of restriction obligation for the new development.
Okay, you know, if we could condition that money goes towards improvements in the local play park, because I think Councillor Arran has an issue with that. And if we could condition a planting of some trees in the local area, I would be happy to propose that we approve the application. That's where I am today, David, if I could have some advice.
Yeah, we can't condition payments, Chair. That's why it's dealt with under Section 106. So the Section 106 obligation is what will deal with that issue. And I think has been explained that there is a commuted sum provision required under the Section 106 with the current extant planning permission, and the same payment would be required under this planning permission, and then in the usual way, you know, that would be allocated to play areas as appropriate within the community, you know, through the usual process. But we can't specifically condition the requirement to spend money in a particular way.
Okay, thank you. Does that clarify matters for you, Nigel?
Yeah, in that case, I'd be happy to propose today that we accept the officer's recommendation and approve this application with the road going down to 20 mile an hour. I don't think there's any reason not to be honest.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Keats, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Nigel. I think this site's well known to us. We did a planning site visit not that far down the road, and we went to this area. And we see it from the A55 and so on. I think there has to be a robust noise mitigation scheme, and Mr. Watson has given us assurances on that. I welcome the new housing supply, and I welcome the 3 affordable dwellings. The highways, I mean, if it goes down to 20 miles an hour, I don't see any problem with that. So yeah, it already has planning permission for a substantial development, which was given in April 2020. So I don't think we could prevaricate really. I'm happy to second Councillor Nigel.
Diolch yn fawr. Before we continue the debate, I want to bring in first Paula Jones, Head of Planning, and then Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Just something to consider. I know a few of you are thinking about deferral of the application. I just thought I'd let you know this poses a few risks to the authority in terms of potential costs, but the main risk to consider at this stage is, as the applicant has said, he's already agreed to 2 extensions of time. One of those expired, or the most recent one expires the end of this month. That means after that date, he could submit a non-determination appeal against the authority for failing to make a decision within time. That obviously comes with risks of potential costs or anything like that if the authority cannot properly justify its reasons. So just thought I'd throw that into the mix as well.
Diolch yn fawr, Paula. Matt?
Yeah, Chair, just to take us up to where we are in terms of the proposition, we had a proposer and a seconder to defer the application for a site visit. So, and we have had an indication that following that, if that's lost, there might be another proposal and second in terms of the officer's recommendation. But in terms of process, shall we deal with the proposal to defer for a site visit first, Chair? And clearly we've heard the explanations from officers about the similarities and the differences between the 2 applications, that is the current one before us today and the one that's already been approved. And so on that basis, the thing that the committee needs to consider is whether or not there is a significant reason why a decision can't be reached without a site visit. So having heard what the officers have to say, that's what the committee has to consider in deciding whether or not to vote for the proposition to defer.
Okay, so
Can I just
before we-
come in before the vote? Sorry.
I've got two councillors who've got their hands up before you, Joe, so if you just wait, yeah? Councillor David Carr.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still on where we're asking questions to Paul. And the question I want to ask is, would a pedestrian, even with the reduction to 20 miles an hour, would a pedestrian crossing be useful? That's what I was asking, to ask. And would that make it safer for the new development if a pedestrian crossing was put in? Thank you.
Paul, can you answer that?
Certainly. Not in the vicinity of the development, as there is nothing to cross to. There is some merit in investigating, and we have done this already with the agents, the provision of perhaps a tactile nearer the football club, which is quite a distance from the site. But we would see that as a benefit, as it would serve people accessing a bus stop on the opposite side of the road. But I would not recommend a refuge or anything like that within the vicinity of the site, and particularly because of the quarry vehicles that also use the site, I would be worried that there would be insufficient width for the refuge per se.
Okay. Councillor Ifor Lloyd.
Yeah, diolch. My question's to Paul as well about the noise abatement, the fence. Do you think that is fit for purpose, Paul? In the report, it seemed kind of comprehensive. I can't see a betterment. Can you?
I cannot, but the noise aspect does not fall under my jurisdiction, sadly, Ivor. I purely assess this application from a highway point of view, and I would simply read the document like you.
No, it's the noise. It's the noise coming off a highway that was concerning me. The A55 isn't a quiet road. That's why I was asking your opinion on that one, really.
I think any improvements to noise reduction for any residents close to the A55 and the railway station would be absolutely welcomed.
Thank you. Right, Joe, before we go to the vote for deferral.
Thank you. Sorry for speaking out of turn. My reason was I thought we were being steered towards the vote for deferral, and I wanted to say, after listening to everybody, I want to withdraw the proposal for deferral, please.
Thank you, Joe. I can't remember who seconded your proposal.
It was Councillor Tony Bertoli.
Do you want to withdraw your?
Yeah, yes, Chair, I agree with Joe. Yeah, having looked at the evidence and heard people out here, I think I'd actually go and agree with it. Actually, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, we still have a proposal and a seconder for the recommendation. So we'll now go ahead with that vote. Thank you. Those of you in favour. And those against? Yeah, thank you. That's been carried. Diolch yn fawr. Iawn, nawn ni symud ymlaen.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item 5D, reference 0/50673 to provide communal allotments and a recreational area for the people of Abergele. I have two speakers on this application. To start, in favour of this application, Councillor Andrew Woods.
Andrew. Sorry, Andrew. I've got it wrong.
Thank you. I thought it was, yeah.
Sorry, I'm a bit of an awkward age where I need to take my glasses off to read, if that makes sense. Good afternoon. Following the submission of the third 30-page objection by the Trust, I would like to pose the following questions to the committee for consideration. Firstly, how is the development of this green space possible when only part of the plot is in the current LDP and when its replacement LDP and document BP30 states that there is a restrictive covenant on the land that needs lifting to enable use as an allotment? That restrictive covenant is still in place as evidenced by the land registry. Secondly, how could an allotment with 50 sheds, all the plastic paraphernalia that goes with it, and the ineffective screening used only have a minor effect on the listed landscape, especially when it sits in the direct line of the last principal view to the Grade 1 listed castle? Thirdly, how can the actual negative impact on the historic setting be outweighed by claims of community benefit when there is no business plan submitted, no demand study, and no operational details given to demonstrate benefit, viability, sustainability of this plot? And let's not forget the 60 objections that have gone in. 4, why is Manor and the golf club being used to set a precedent for further development of the historic parkland when neither have a negative impact on the historic views? Cadw states that using existing development is not a reason to develop the remaining listed historic landscape further. In fact, it is quite the opposite. What remains needs protecting. 5, how did the application get to this committee stage when the councillor first stated the land is not known to be or suspected to be contaminated, but provides no testing results, but then does provide spots on a map of the golf course where pesticides are used? And secondly, the councillor gave that the proposed use would not be particularly vulnerable to the presence of contamination when the councillor wants to rent the plot out for growing food. 6, how can this plot be fit for growing food when its neighbour, the golf course, has been using pesticides for 55 years, many of which have been banned due to ill health effects such as cancer? Pesticides persist in the environment and spread in application, the water cycle, and especially with flooding. Flooding is particularly relevant to this site to the extent that it's had £2 million spent on a flood alleviation scheme. Finally, I have a degree in environmental science and 17 years working in environment, occupational health and safety, and have worked with contaminated land and its remediation. It is my opinion the whole plot needs to be tested and deemed safe before use. So can I just end on that? Okay. Okay.
Same rule applies. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today about this community allotment project for Abergele. Abergele is the only large town in Conwy County Council that not to have allotment provision. The land in this application, all the land, totals 0.85 hectares and has been scrutinised and accepted under the statutory development guidance, further tested at the planning examination held in 2012, which then transitioned into the current Conwy LDP in 2013, and that is what we use now. Abergele and Pensarn currently have 78 people on their waiting list for allotments. Conwy County Council has 398 registered people on their list. We desperately need more allotments throughout Conwy County. The proposed south-facing site in this application is shielded and screened from the houses and the residents of Eldon Drive by a 2.65 high stone wall, and on the opposite side of the site, shielding the neighbouring Manravon Farm Park, is a 240-metre, 3-metre high hedge. Also providing further screening from the main road is a newly planted 100-metre hedgerow, which is set back not to affect any visibility displays at the junction. The application will retain grassed areas, paths and green roads in between the allotment beds, and lots of care have gone to minimise any effect from storage sheds by moving some behind the 2.65 wall. The rest of the allotment sheds will be clustered into groups of 2 or 4 to minimise any impact, and all will be of the same type and design made from wood. A raised bed area is planned for a wheelchair, stroke, disabled and elderly users with appropriate parking close by. And also the site will need a machinery shed, a beekeeping shed for apiary equipment, and also a toilet for the users of the site. Ecology and wildlife. We have placed nesting bird boxes within the hedgerows and planted trees over the last 2 years, and we have planned 2 hedgehog conservation areas to the west of the site with the golf club. A shallow surface water pond is planned midpoint, using harvested water to produce a biodiversity site and a bog garden. And we have retained grass parking areas on the site and wildlife corridors, and we'll be providing cycle racks and a shelter. If users need public transport, there is a main bus stop 35 metres from the road entrance, and we're about half a mile from Abergele Pensarn railway station. This is a much needed project for Abergele, not only for growing food and teaching the young people where their food comes from, but for people to meet, share and learn together. This, as we know, benefits all our well-being and promotes good mental health, as well as building a community spirit for people of all ages and backgrounds. The basic design, I believe, should be a pilot model considered with every new planning application for homes to provide for more allotments in Abergele. Thank you, committee. Thank you.
I now hand over to the officer, Kerry Thomas.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. There are a few bullet points in the addendum. I don't think they will take too long to go through. We noted on site yesterday that the applicant has laid out green poles to demarcate the site. We haven't had any further comments from Cadw. We have explained to them the situation in respect of the fact that there are permitted development rights for certain buildings on allotments. I can clarify those if further if applicants, sorry, if members seek clarification on the matter. There was a question about opening hours, and according to the application, the sites will be open between 8 AM and 8 PM Monday to Sunday, including bank holidays. It's been noted that part of the site is allocated for allotment use in the LDP. So essentially, it's the furthest end of the site. The field closest to the access road of Manor Afon Farm is not allocated. In terms of policy, however, I would like to draw 2 things into account. Firstly, it is national planning policy and Planning Policy Wales that supports allotments, and secondly, the use of land for agriculture, including horticulture, does not involve development. So the site does not need to be allocated for allotments for you to be in a position to approve it. We've had clarification that the access track within the site will be constructed of grass stroke terrain to ensure that no hard landscaping is proposed. Any other paths will be constructed of permeable paving. There was a question yesterday as to whether there would be any parking over the winter that might churn the land. We've had clarification from the applicant that many allotment owners and users will attend the site in the winter period. However, those that do will be restricted to parking. Not many allotment owners will attend over the winter period. However, those that do will be restricted to parking close to the entrance in a well-drained area between the winter months of November to March to ensure that paths between them do not become damaged and waterlogged by vehicles travelling along them. In response to some other matters raised, the existence of a covenant is not a planning consideration. It's not a matter which the planning authority can take into account. And in response to questions regarding contamination, there hasn't been any objection from the Public Protection Department. Furthermore, I would ask you to bear in mind that the use of land for horticulture does not involve development in any case. It's something that, you know, if a farmer wanted to cultivate the ground to grow potatoes or whatever, they could do it without planning permission. So it is our view that it will be disproportionate to require soil testing as a planning condition. I've got no further to add on.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Thomas. Right, I've got several hands up. First of all, Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to move the officer's recommendation. I don't see anything wrong with this application. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Is anybody willing to second that proposal? Councillor Gwynol Ellis, diolch yn fawr. Right, next on my list, I've got Councillor David Jones.
Yeah, I was going to second Nigel as well. I was on the site visit yesterday and reading through everything and listening to the speakers today. I've got absolutely no problem with this application. It's absolutely needed. We need more of this within the county. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Councillor David Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely support more allotments. I noticed in debate in the Senate a while back, the First Minister actually got an allotment, and the local Conservative member was we were in total agreement that we do need more allotments in Wales. And I think they're a fantastic idea, and I very much support this. Thank you.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. Ifor Lloyd.
Yeah, can I just say this is a local project for local people, and it's wonderful. Sandy clay loam? It's a really nice growing substrate soil as well. And going to the hydraulics and the leaching of chemicals from the neighbouring golf club, very unlikely, because the actual substructure of the ground that the soil stands on is very free draining, so it would go straight down, and it would have been picked up anyway by the new system that they just spent £2 million on. So yeah, not close enough to affect it, put it that way. Okay, but very supportive. Diolch.
Right, quickly, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Having read over 50 of the objections today, the overwhelming majority were in favour of allotments per se, but their only issue was the location. Most of those objectors did not propose an alternative site, so on that recommendation, I would be more than happy to second this.
Now, diolch yn fawr. Well, you don't have to. I've already had a seconder in, Councillor Gwynol Ellis. Diolch yn fawr. Right then, so we've got a proposer to go with recommendation. We've got a seconder. So now can I ask you to vote, please? Yes, I think that is unanimous. Mae hwnna wedi'w gario. That is passed. Yeah. We'll wait while we get both Councillor Alan Hunter and Councillor Andrew Wood back in the room. Where's Alan? Okay, just to let you know, councillors, that application has been approved. Yeah. Okay, yr un nesa, item 5.
Okay, item number 5. C. Code reference 0/50590. Proposed dormer to front of property 50 Penderfyn, Llandudno Junction. And the officer for this application is Dave. Thank you.
Minded to grant conditional planning permission.
Diolch yn fawr. Councillor Chris Kitter.
Yeah, I'm minded to support this application, but I was wondering whether we have any slides of the elevations and these windows, just so because we haven't done a site visit there. I do know the area and I can't see a problem with it, but it would be useful to see it up on the screen. Thank you.
You can see the application site edged in red, roughly in the middle of the map there. It's a semi-detached property, bungalow property on the outside of a bend. While we're looking at this map, I'll draw your attention to the fact that we've approved a very similar, if not identical, dormer extension to number 37, which is further along the road to the southeast, looking at that, sorry, to the southwest, on the other side of the road. So I wanted to show you the drawings for this application and show you briefly the drawings for the one approved at number 37. And you may have picked up in the report that there was a previous refusal for a dormer bungalow on the application site. So I wanted to show you the drawing for that as well, if possible. So if you can go to the drawings next, please, Julia. Okay, that's the existing drawing for the application site. Next one, please. Okay. I can't actually see whether that's either the application site or it's number 37, but they are the same scheme. I think that's the application site. So you can see the front dormer on the top right-hand side of that elevation drawing. You can see, looking at the elevation below that to the side, that it's a flat roof dormer. It's slightly below the ridge height of the bungalow, and it's set in from the sides of the bungalow as well, of the roof. Next slide down, please. So this is the one which I say is an identical one approved at number 37. And then the slide below that, this is the one that was refused on the application site. And it was a slight, it's almost a case of spot the difference, but it's a slightly bigger dormer, and this one went up to fully up to the ridge height of the dwelling. So you can see the flat roof elements on the second side elevation there. The flat roof elements join on the ridge height, and it was slightly closer to the edges of the roof. So it's been set in slightly more now as well. So on the basis of the changes, and we've approved an application further down the street, we feel that this is an acceptable design for the dwelling. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch fawr. Happy, Councillor Keita?
I stand by the my support of the officer's recommendation.
Are you willing to?
Proposing,
Yes, thank you. Is there a second of that? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Price. Cynghorydd Ifor Lloyd, dach chi deud rhywbeth?
Just eisiau gwybod be mae'n cael ei orffen.
I'd just like to know what the finish is.
Or is it being used, or are you going to use a natural cement finish on this?
I missed the start of the question.
Okay.
I heard natural cement, but
Yeah, sorry. Is it going to be finished in K-Rend, or is it going to be just an ordinary sand and cement finish?
My recollection is that it's tile hanging on the
Right.
dormer to
Okay.
match the existing dormer with a roof, and I can't remember what the material is, but you probably wouldn't see that anyway.
Tile, okay. Iawn, diolch, thank you.
Okay.
Happy Celia, yeah.
Iawn. Cynghorydd Tristan Lewis?
Yeah, eisiau eilio ni.
I'd just like to second as well, but it's already been done. Thank you.
David Jones?
Yeah, I was going to second as well. I'm very happy with the
Okay.
the improvements to the
Thank you.
plans.
Mae gennau gynigydd, mae gennau
I have a
eilydd.
proposer and I have a seconder, so can I ask you to vote in the usual way, please?
Lovely. Unfrydol.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That has been carried. The next application, number 5E, the reference is 0/5078. Installation of 2 rapid electric vehicle charging stations within the car park of Aberconwy Holiday and Leisure Park. The 3 existing parking spaces will become EV charging bays along with associated equipment. One of the 2 EV charging bays will be fully accessible, allowing for unrestricted access to 1 EV charger with 1.2 meter access on 4 sides of the parking bay. Thank you very much. And the officer is David Watson.
In the addendum, the recommendation is minded to grant conditional planning permission.
Diolch yn fawr. Cynghorydd Alan
Thank you
Hunter.
very much, Councillor Alan Hunter.
Just to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation.
Diolch yn fawr. Is there a seconder? Diolch yn fawr. I'll take Mandy Hawkins this time. Ifor Lloyd?
Yeah, happy to.
Yes, I'm happy to second this. There isn't enough of these. Thank you.
Yeah, happy.
Oh, lovely. Pawb yn hapus. Okay.
Okay, everybody happy? I have a proposer, a seconder. Can you show your vote in your usual way, please? Thank you. That is the
Reit, symud ar y cais nesa.
And we'll move on to the next item, number 5F. Code reference 0/50740. Proposal to provide render system to south-east facing external wall of the grade 2 listed property. It is a listed building consent. 7 Abigail Road, Colwyn Bay, and the officer is Mr. Thomas. Thank you.
There's nothing to report in the addendum other than to clarify as a matter of procedure that we will be consulting Cadw after the committee decision. So the grant of listed building consent will be subject to notification to Cadw. I don't think there's any need to amend the recommendation, but it's simply noted as a matter of procedure.
Diolch yn fawr. Y cynghorydd Nigel Smith.
Yes, just move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, cynghorydd David Jones.
Yeah, I'd like to second the officer's recommendation.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. I've got a proposer, I've got a seconder. Gadra i felly ofyn i chi bleidleisio yn y
Can I
ffordd.
please ask you to vote in the usual way? Thank you very much. That has been carried unanimously. The next application, number 5G, code reference 0/50755. Proposal to provide render system to southeast facing external wall of grade 2 listed property, number 7 Abigail Road, Colwyn Bay. Mr. Thomas?
This is an identical proposal to the listed building consent. It's simply a requirement under different legislation, and there's nothing further to report.
Nigel?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Dave?
Happy to second.
Diolch yn fawr. I've got a second. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd. Reit, mae hwnna hefyd yn unfrydol.
That has also been carried unanimously.
Iawn. Reit, yr un nesa.
The next item. Just turning the page. 5H, code reference 0/50772. Installation of wheelchair access surrounding the existing building in Ysgol Capelula, Treforys Road, Dwygyfylchi. Dave Watson.
The recommendation is minded to grant conditional planning permission. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ifor Lloyd? Yes, this is completely essential. I'm happy to propose this recommendation. Councillor Dave Jones?
Happy to second.
Diolch
Absolutely
yn
needed.
fawr. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you to show in the usual way, please? Thank you. That is also unanimous and has been approved. And that's it. The other application has been taken off. So can I thank all the officers for being here, to Matt and Sian and all of you members and everyone else who has contributed. Can I wish you all a good, lovely afternoon? That's it. Thank you very much.
Hwyl fawr. Ta-ra.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Diolch ti.